to a point where if there is a necessary being, how do you know that things followed from this necessary being by will, by design, by choice, rather than it just happens? How do we assign to this necessary existence a will? That is the point that we came to discuss.
Yes. Can I ask a different question this time?
No, why not carry on that one?
We can later.
Okay, fair enough. Go ahead.
Whatever you want.
Yeah. Remind me your name.
Toby.
Turban. Toby.
Yeah, what's yours?
Toby, Mansour.
Mansour.
Pleased to meet you again.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
So what you say, God or Allah is a perfect being, like perfect in terms of perfectly loving, perfectly of all the goods that we would say are good character traits, right?
Perfect in his attributes, no deficiencies.
In his attributes. So the world he creates, so the world he creates, or the law he gives us, would be full of these attributes, no?
Fit for purpose.
Sorry?
The law he gives us, for us, which will be fit for purpose.
For purpose.
Fit for purpose. So for example, I may be born poor, but I can still be fit for purpose in fulfilling the purpose I'm created for. You may be created rich instead, being poor, and still it will be fit for purpose of your creation, of your purpose of your creation. So these kind of things that we may be given as provisions will differ depending on people. People at least have given this intellect based on their role and exercise of the intellect, they will be judged. So if someone has not been given sanity, they're already insane to begin with, for example, the pen is lifted. They don't have judgment because they cannot appreciate and understand and differentiate between right and wrong, good and bad, truth and falsehood.
And the purpose, will it be, like the purpose will be fully good and fully, no.
So
or the purpose will just be to
it's not fully good. The purpose is we are created here to know our Creator and to serve our Creator, so that we can then transition in the next life, where it will be a life of goodness and happiness, tranquility, in all contentment, joy, bliss, as opposed to a life in which there is suffering, there is torture, there is pain. So there's two destinations. So we have been given the faculty here of intellect to actually work out where do we want to go, where do we want to end up. We can have our exercising our will, our choice to determine which path to take. And our Creator on this way, in our journey, He guides us constantly. He sent prophets and messengers already to convey this message that is required for us to be on the track of that guidance. So our purpose isn't like, you become perfect. No, you work towards perfection because you'll never be perfect. We are created in a way that we can never reach perfection.
But you say the perfection is mostly about knowing God and
perfection belongs to God only. Everything else, God created fit for purpose as they are.
So last time you were saying something about, you were saying, why is rape bad? You said we just know rape is bad, right?
No, I didn't say rape is bad. No, it wasn't me. No.
But if some things we just know they're good or bad, right?
So you're talking about the Ephesus dilemma. What makes good good? Is it because God says so? What makes bad bad is because God says so? What is your take on that as a philosopher?
I don't know. I think it's a hard question. I mean, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. Like maybe we came up with what is good in terms of what is useful for us in the society. I don't know. But I think it's an interesting question where the goodness comes from for religious people.
So we say the source of goodness is God, right?
Okay. The source of it. What does that mean?
Okay, so if you are inherently feeling somewhere to be kind and compassionate, it wasn't your program in your genes to become good to the others.
Right.
In fact, our genes are quite selfish, if you know something about genetics, right? If it means to save you while the others can perish, it should save you and your gene pool and then continue your life. But there's something inherent within you telling you that you need to be merciful and compassionate, kind to the others. we say these are all rooted or source or grounded in God. God is the source of all of that. Okay? He's instilled within us. That's why in the Quran it says, فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا. He has inspired within us fujuraha, the bad things and so on and so on, inclination and so on, fujur, and taqwaha, the piety, the righteousness, the God consciousness. That is why we all know inherently that, doing harm to the others is not necessarily good. It's a bad thing. Yeah, this is inspired within us. So there's always going to be this dichotomy and this imbalance that we need to balance. We need to balance it. We need to really, if you have evil inclination, repress it, and always go and with inclinations to do good, because there will always be an element of where inspiration from your own desires, your own self, your own ego, your community, your society telling you do this when it may be even bad. Yeah? So you have to really suppress and repress, and you withstand this kind of temptation, and you say, no, this is not good, even though there's some joy in it, or some fun in it, or some entertainment in it. You know how people take drugs? Why is it illegal in most countries? Hard drugs, controlled drugs. If controlled drugs were really something beneficial for everyone, because it gives you that high and that good feeling of joy, then why did they ban it? Why did they make it illegal? The reason why...
I mean, you could say in the long term, it's not really joyful, right?
Yeah. So ultimately, there is some harm either to an individual or to society. That's why they want to say, no, should be totally banned and not illegal to possess, illegal to consume, illegal to sell, illegal to buy, and so on. Quran has, in Islam, there's a principle similar, which is Islam puts in society, which society is taking in as well. Prevention is better than cure. So it doesn't wait for problems to happen and say, now let's deal with this. It wants to prevent any kind of harm to come to society. So many of the laws in Islam is actually preventative in measure, and they also have an element of deterrent in function. Yeah? So that is how, if you look at why Islam says, dress modestly in public, there is a reason for it. It wants to prevent people's temptations and desires and their inner ego to go and somehow take over by force, whatever they like. Raping, for example. Islam says no. Remove that kind of, create a barrier in between. So if you have modest dress, your psyche is now not conditioned to like. You see, when people have this kind of attraction or repulsion, right? When they look at something nice and attractive, some chemistry is going on. How do you know someone's attractive? Someone's beautified themselves, made themselves look nice and handsome and so on and so forth. That is where the chemicals now start pouring all over your body and say, you want to do something. Islam will say in public, when you don't need to have this kind of bond created, have a barrier in between, prevent that thing happening. Man, there is a limit in terms of what is considered to be modest dress for man. Okay, so it goes from at least from the navel to the knees. But women have a more of a body coverage than men.
But what?
Okay, how much money do I and you spend on your hair? Beautifying it, making it nice and so on, compared to women? Less, more, or equal? Less. It's actually less. They spend so much more to beautify it, to make it look so nice and attractive and so on and so forth. That is why Islam says for women, they need to cover their hair. Because that becomes an element of attraction, an object of attraction, which can lead to what we talk about, the consequences in public, when we don't want this kind of attraction happening. At home, she doesn't have to in front of her husband and so on. Yes?
So what if I did my hair very nice?
You said it less anyway. But as you know, whenever you think about the opposite sex, for example, the object that attracts you, the hair is one of them. It is undoubtedly in most cultures, if not all cultures. Okay, so they have different what we call the layers or boundaries of modesty. But our Creator knows, how men and women work in their psyche.
Yeah, but a lot of women can be attracted to men if they wear things like that. I'm
Yeah.
not very attractive.
No,
but if I wear
I'm saying
something on my hair-
you can say yes, no, but if you look at societies across time and history and without boundaries, and you will see how the attraction between man and woman have been, and in terms of what kind of layers one needs to have and so on. So these are historical things. You can go in the historical research, you can find out. So Islam, have these minimum boundaries of body coverage for men and women because of, God knows the limits man has and woman has.
But isn't there historical continuity also about that women's sexuality is not really acknowledged? But it's always been there.
It's too noisy, can we just come here?
So women's sexuality has always been there. Women find men attractive.
Maybe
as well.
some cultures, not all cultures. Islam never considered that women's sexuality is something that is not recognized or appreciated. In fact, a man, the husband, just as he has a right, the wife has a right over him, he has a right over her, it's equal footing. Man cannot just simply say, he needs to be gratified and satisfied and pleased and so on. He has the equal responsibility and duty to fulfill the woman or the wife. Islam considers it very, very important for the mutual benefit and relationship between spouses and for the healthiness or health of the society at large.
Does Islam say anything about rape within marriage?
You see, this is an interesting topic when it's discussed in jurisprudence. What is marriage and what is rape? If you talk about it, a marital contract is a contract in which you give a legal permission to your husband to have right over your body, sexually. That is what marital contract is, right? So if you think about it this way, how can you then impose another limit and say, no, you can't?
They just say it's not rape. You should say what I call rape, you would say it's not rape.
Yeah, because rape is a forceful when you force on someone else. So it doesn't make much sense. But Islam is not someone like you should just jump over on your spouse and so on. You should think and look after, because how can you treat one something like this? You have to treat her as a spouse, and she has to treat you like that. So the idea of man can just jump over a woman in the sense of rape is an oxymoron. It doesn't make much sense.
Let's say if I marry someone, I basically forfeit my bodily rights to them. So if I don't want to have sex with them for a month or something, after some time they have to right to have sex.
If you agree on a mutual basis, this is the case. I mean, if you look at in Islam as well, if a woman wants to say, for example, someone's married more to one wife, and one of the wives says, I give my days or my nights to her, the co-wife. It's quite common. If someone doesn't have the urge or the need or the feelings to do that, they can do that. But this establishes one thing, a priori, that even though you have co-wives, they have equal rights. So if you have two wives, for example, you have to spend the same amount of time, as much as possible. And if one says, my share can be given to the other, that's her prerogative. That's her wish, for example, that can be granted. But a default position is equal, even though she may not have this sexual desires left anymore and so on. But still the right to spend that time necessary. Because this time between spouses is not just about sex, is it? Right. Mutual connection between two individuals of love and compassion, mercy. This is how people connect to each other. And this is, just intimacy is just one part of it.
I'm German. In Germany, rape within marriage was legal until 1998, something like that. And that was a big debate, and the conservatives were against illegalizing it. They wanted to keep it legal, and the liberals were more no, rape is rape. What do you think about the state banning rape in marriage?
The current societal laws and regulations are of course different because women are more liberal. For them, even if you're married, they might just simply say no, right? Because that's the individual liberal right they feel they have, even if they're in a marital relationship. That's why it's complex for a non-Islamic society in which this ideas of liberalism is in place in a secular society, for example, not governed by a theocracy, a law from God. It's quite different. So they have to solve their own problems in terms of how they decide, because of the rights you've given to man and woman in terms of the liberties, and how this can be shared between them or imposed or not imposed. Like, is such a thing as rape, which is valid in that context? It may be so, right? It may be so. If this is the understanding, if this is what they consider to be the agreement that just because I'm married doesn't mean that you can just have this intimacy anytime you want. No, if I say no, it's a no. And if you then just jump over, then that will be considered to be
But in your ideal society, you wouldn't want.
No, you see, our Islamic society is not just one aspect of where it's a men and women interaction only. It's a holistic system in which there is education system, crime and punishment, economic system, social system, the moral system. All of that goes hand in hand, in which the society is nourished, protected, maintained, and supported. Unlike a society like here, is there any moral policing? If you lie, for example, there is no moral policing saying, it's a criminal offense and they'll fine you. There's no such thing. But in an Islamic society, even things like lying is a moral crime, and which is quite significant in the sight of God. And like backbiting, for example, the Quran says it's like eating the flesh of your dead brother. Backbiting. Talking about someone on their back while they're not here. It's like you have a friend and say, you know what, he's an idiot, while he's not there, and you backbite against him when it may not be true. This is like eating the flesh of your dead brother. Just imagine, if you have a brother and he's dead, would you want to eat his flesh? Disgusting. So repelling. So that's why Islam says, no, this is exactly how backbiting is. Stay away from backbiting. It's like this. So the moral support Islam has in its laws and principles to do with ethics and morality is very, very significant. And this is why Islamic societies, if you think about it when it's practiced, they're very, successful in terms of the harmonious relationship, in terms of progress. If you consider the Islam when it was implemented and how the society progressed compared to some other societies, you will see the difference. Because Islam is holistic in nature in its application of all these spheres of life. Because it's not like God didn't just simply create you and say, you know what, you work out what's better for you in this life. He spared us because He knows we are weak and we are limited in terms of our understanding and comprehension about a lot of issues. Things like euthanasia, things like abortion. These are very hot topic, even debated today. Things like assisted suicide, or even suicide in general. Today, Western and Eastern societies together, have they come into a consensus about it? Everyone have their own understanding. Some people might say, it's okay, you can have legalized euthanasia. So that's why people go to another country to be medically terminated, because they think this person is suffering so much, let's take that life away.
Do you think consensus is something good? To say, do you think it's good if all countries agreed on it?
Consensus from people who might not know something, how can it even be good? So if we want definitive guidance about an issue from something, we should look at the guidance from our Creator. That's the most infallible guidance. Infallible. That's the best guidance. Human beings, in the past, they erred. We know about them. When they agreed together, they erred, made mistakes. And they keep on making mistakes even today. And we will keep on making mistakes even later. Even if we had such a supposed consensus, people will still make mistakes. Why? Because this consensus may be made based on simple ignorance of the whole evidence of reality. For example, chance. Chance. Is there such a thing as chance in your understanding through philosophical lens?
Like I roll the dice.
Yeah. Is there such a thing as chance?
I don't know. Could be. It might be physically determined, might not be.
Right. You see? But many people think there is an element of chance, isn't it? Right? But if you think about it, if it was rolling a dice, right, or a coin, and it rolled over and it falls. If I had the prerequisite, and I'm going to tell you what these are, I can guarantee every single time head or tail or on the side. If I knew, for example, the weight of the coin, the shape of the coin, the type of metal, the force I flicked it through, how much it went up, the gravitational force, yeah. If I knew the place it's falling on, the solid, is it a rock, is it a metal, is it plastic, is it rubber, whatever it is. If I knew the wind speed, if I knew the temperature, if I knew the humidity, if I knew so many factors, I can just simply say head, tail, with precision and accuracy. Yeah. It's our ignorance about those factors involved. We cannot quite predict or accurately determine what it's going to be because we don't know those factors. So in our world operates with natural laws God has put in. But there are many things that we don't know yet. That's why we still say this is a matter of chance. But actually, the Creator has determined in a qadar, in a due proportion, everything within this universe, and it governs, these laws governs the universe. So we say the fire burns, but within this property it may be a property where that the fire may not even burn, right? But we don't know those intricate details of at what point and what can make the fire not burn and so on. If natural laws are there, we will say these are miracles. So when Abraham, the prophet, went into the furnace by Nimrod and he didn't burn, we would say definitely it's a miracle. But it's still operating within God's laws, which we are not familiar with. Okay? There are laws. I mean, to give you an example, can you even think about fire or heat coming from stones? Now we know, because we even cook from heated stones. You can have a barbecue from heated stones. Stones can give you that heat, even though you don't see the heat coming through and so on. Even from stones. You don't know hot weather. Try walking in the Middle East, you will see how hot it can become. So various ways things can absorb heat and they can reflect that heat back, and you can actually boil an egg. I think just this heat wave, people boiled egg in stones. Here in UK, this is what I heard. Maybe it's possible if there was so much heat being reflected and absorbed in the stones. So my friend,
Yes.
Toby, in Islam,
Yes.
if you think about it, if you have at least this understanding and the concept that there is a creator, or possibility of being a creator, being necessary being, and one and only the absolute being who is not deficient, you will see that this line of thinking is in total sync with your heart and your mind. You will see it's like finely tuned. It makes sense. To give you an example, in the Quran there's a chapter or a surah called Surah Al-Ikhlas. A very small chapter. It goes like this, and I'll translate to you in English. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Qul huwa Allahu ahad, Allahu samad, lam yalid wa lam yulad, wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. Say he is one, unique and only. Ahad. Okay? Say God is one, unique and only. This is the first ayah or a verse. Second says he is as-samad, meaning he is self-sufficient. He is independent. He is free from any needs, but everyone or everything needs him. This is the word as-samad. Lam yalid wa lam yulad means he is not born, neither does he beget any children or produce any children. So that means he has not been produced himself or generated or made or been brought into existence. Neither does this creator God produce or generate or beget or create or make something like him, like children and offspring. Okay, no fathers, forefathers, and no children and offspring. Okay, up and down, no lineage. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. And there is no similarity or similitude like him. No co-equal, no comparison in any form or shape. So if you think about it, he is one only and unique. If God is the necessary being, he has to be absolutely one and unique, because there will be no one before him, because he's the first cause of everything. So there cannot be another one. So being one establishes that. Otherwise there will be another one. There will be some other God that brought God into existence. If he's one, then, and he's not someone that is brought about or generated, and he must be self-sufficient because no one brought or gave life to this existence. So he must be totally independent and self-sufficient. If he's one and independent and self-sufficient, and he must be unique that way, then he cannot be someone who's born or produces children or offspring, because there will be 2 or 3 or 4 and many. If he hasn't got any children or offspring, doesn't have any fathers or forefathers, and he's one and independent and absolute and unique, there can be nothing like him. Totally without any co-equality, co-comparison in whatever shape or form. This is one chapter in the Quran which you will find that philosophically, reasonably, intellectually, with your feeling of your heart and your mind, it makes sense. This is how the Quran describes who our Creator is.
But don't you think, or aren't you worried that, let's say this necessary being, this very first being, I mean, I'm surprised, I would be surprised if we know a lot about that being, if we even know what kind of being it is, namely a god or something, which has attributes like knowing, like I don't know, like, don't you think that as humans, like if there's a necessary being, it would be very hard, basically impossible for our intellect to know what that kind of being is?
I partially agree, because it is true that as a finite, limited and dependent creature of this necessary being, you would not be able to understand this absolute being. But you can, with your intellectual speculation and reasoning, with the faculty of intellect and exercise of it, you would know this necessary being has to be absolute and one, and has to be unique and independent, has to be unlike anything, just like the chapter that I mentioned to you. These things, your mind is able to grasp, comprehend and accept without any difficulty. But whether this creator, for example, why did this creator create us? The purpose of our creation. You would not intellectually confirm by speculation. Like, you might say, he created me to have chocolates. My purpose of life is to just have chocolates. And he would say, just have bananas. Just making something up, right? You would not know. You would not be able to firmly confirm by intellectual speculation many things about the actions of our Creator, about other things about the Creator. So that's why we don't rely on intellectual speculation only. We have to rely on what we call revelation, or information from that being. When the absolute necessary existence tells us what he is, who he is, and what he is not, and who is not, we know that. Only then.
Can I ask you a personal question?
As long as it's not personal enough to share with people.
But I'm leaving London, so I want to ask this to you before I leave. So, like, the perfect society, or like, we talked about the perfect society earlier, right? Like what the best society is, we talked about...
Best society. There won't be a perfect society.
Okay, fine.
Because within that society, there will be someone, an outlier, who messes up the system, right? And we need to deal with that.
But so we have, it's kind of liberalism in Western states. So it's like 3 questions basically. First, right now, which nation do you think has the best laws / society / political system that you most agree with? Second question, if it's not the UK, why are you here? Like, just because you grew up here, or because of, I don't know, some political reasons, whatever. The third question I forgot, but I don't know, I'm happy for you to answer this.
Okay, so second question, I'm a taxpayer. So I, with my taxes, run the services in hospitals, in police, in ambulances and so on. So I make the society run with my taxpayer money, right?
And I mean every society would make it run, right? This one or
so if it's me personally, yes, I am contributor of the society to make the society function. But why I'm here is multifaceted reasons. I mean, if I just talk about it, even before I was here, my parents was here. Okay, so because my parents were here already, that's why I am here. That could be a simple reasons. But why am I still here? Could be because I have educated myself here and I'm working here. But if you say, why don't you go to a society which is best, if you think this is not the best society, At the moment, there isn't one, which is implementing the laws and regulations of a best society. Had there been one, we should go as Muslims and what we call make hijrah. We try our best, we have the intention, to move away. So there's always this intention within a Muslim to make this desire to leave a land where your religion has obstacle in being practiced. If you find that your fulfillment of living a life of a Muslim, a submitter to God, is in question, is in jeopardy, is in harm, then you shouldn't be living as long as here, for example, which always we need. But if you can justify that by saying, I'm still here because I want to convey the message of Islam to people, like this conversation I'm having with you, utilizing the platform, the land, the media, and so on and so forth, which otherwise would not have been possible. So that could be one justification for us to stay here rather than leave to somewhere where it's more beneficial for a Muslim to live and raise up their children and so on. So there has to be, I agree with you, every Muslim has to justify their stance of living here in a non-Muslim land, okay? Because they should be in a Muslim land. So if they cannot justify it, they need to seriously think why they're here. Okay, agree. That is a principle in Islam. Okay, it's quite well known, and people often don't think about it because they came here whatever reason and they stayed on. But that's not how it should be. Because if you think the society is detrimental for your own living and the living of your children that's going to be in your family and so on and so forth, you need to think twice because it might be the right place. And that's why my friend, for example, I know my work colleague has already purchased some land in a particular country, and he's already made his ways. He's changed his job to a job in which he can then work even when he goes to that. So he's making this move already, and then it's quite commonplace. You will see ask many of the Muslims here, and they will say, that they're already trying to make that transition. Now, what is the best society if there is one here? The answer is we try to implement Islam in our societies, and people are struggling to do that. And this has been the case after 1924, because this is when officially the Islamic State was dismantled, right? The Khilafah system was dismantled then. And after then, people are trying to, but you have, powers and political elites or ruling parties, they're always trying to create a barrier, an obstacle for an ideal Islamic society to be formed. Because whenever people want to do that, they will somehow align it to be a terrorist society, a society in which it's all about dictatorship and so on and so forth. But that wasn't the case. At one point when Islam was implemented, the Jews and the Christians were living in harmony, in peace, to such an extent that they were holding very high official positions in the government. They were contributing to the science and technology. They were naming stars. In Baghdad, for example, or in Andalus, or in Cordoba, what were they doing? Muslims, non-Muslims, Jews and Christians, they united within this, the Islamic infrastructure, but they're living with tolerance and understanding, and yet science, technology, mutual living, mutual tolerance were flourishing. They didn't have a problem. When Europe were oppressing, discriminating, killing the Jewish people, where did they go? They went to Islamic State. It was a safe haven. Islam embraced them to be in that, and they knew that. In fact, the golden period of the Jewish society or their times was under Islam. If you think about it, that's why you should have a conversation with the Jewish people. Look at your history and so on. What made that possible? Because Islam did not just simply, say, "Oh, you don't want to believe and that's it. Off with your head." No, you can still, have, this freedom to live in your religion. Okay, as a citizen of the Islamic country. So, unfortunately, to answer your question fully, there is no Islamic state or the best state, but Muslims should be striving, because if we don't change, God would not change our condition. We have to make sure we change our condition so that Allah changes the conditions that we all are aspiring to.
So you don't think,
Yeah, so there isn't one.
But there's the best. But
There isn't one.
They're all the same.
No, they're not all the same.
Then
No, they're not all the same. There are countries where they're implementing a lot of Islamic rules and regulations
Like
and
Afghanistan,
guidance.
Saudi Arabia.
Now, look at
talking
what happened in Afghanistan. It became like a state in which they didn't implement it as they should have done it. Okay? This is one of my criticisms. For example, what happened when they were toppled again?
Sorry?
When the Taliban was somehow toppled again, they're no longer in power. What happened? The next few weeks or months, people reverted back again. Lipsticks, cinemas, music, and so on. It didn't change them. So to change a society, you have to condition the people. Like the society is conditioning us in terms of LGBTQ, in terms of this and that, right? Aren't they? They're conditioning our 3-year-old at school. Yeah? Adam and Steve and all that thing.
No, I mean, they always...
No.
Okay, but they always...
But do you understand something? Conditioning, whether it's good or bad, conditioning to make people understand and accept.
Sure.
In their particular implementation, it wasn't. They didn't try to make people understand that, okay, this is the reason why it's bad. This is the reason why it's virtuous. And you should avoid the bad and embrace the virtuous. If I told you, like, look, gambling, it gives you easy money.
We're gonna dance here first.
You might win,
Then we'll go
but
against
look at the
Muhammad.
flip
Let's
side.
dance to Jesus first.
You might become the loser. You might lose everything. You might be so miserable, so unhappy. And so I can give you all of that and say, look, if you think about this, do you really want to be a gambler? Or do you want to take personal responsibility? Say, I'm going to work, strive hard, be a responsible person, and earn my living, which are halal or permissible. And then I appreciate that it is my, what's it called, hard-earned money. Do you understand? Rather than simply easy money that can easily go and so on. So once you appreciate and understand why gambling is not so good, you will say, I don't want to gamble anymore. Even if you are no longer in the Islamic ethos, you go somewhere else, you'll still say, no, I don't have to gamble. I don't need to gamble because gambling is necessarily not good. Because in fact, it's more harm in gambling than the good that it will bring. So it's better to avoid it.
Sure, that's interesting. I have to go. But,
take care, Toby. It was a pleasure speaking to you.
Yes.
And hopefully, when you go back to Germany, continue speaking with Muslims there.
No, sure.
Yeah?
Yes,
Bye.
bye.